Alright, so hopefully you've got the week 7 assignment file open. Just real quick, we'll walk through the assignment tab. The first question, create an XY matrix on the blank XY matrix tab to determine which suppliers are best in terms of overall performance. Number 2, based on your ranking, list 3 suppliers who should be awarded Supplier of the Year. Number 3, which suppliers should we consider working with on improvement activities? So basically, which ones are scoring the lowest of all the suppliers? And then number 4, suppose supplier quality became a much bigger topic in your organization. How could you adjust the attribute scores to reflect this change in strategy? So, your CEO comes out and says, hey, listen everybody, quality's been a big problem for us this year. We're going to make it a big point of emphasis with our suppliers. What would you need to do in terms of how you were weighting your attributes to determine how you want to positively change quality going forward? So we'll go ahead and get started with the XY matrix. So the first step here is going to be pulling in a list of your suppliers. So the fill rate tab has that list for you. You can just highlight the group here and then come over to your XY matrix tab and just paste that in cell A2. So the way this is going to work is that top line, that row 1, is going to be where your attributes are stored. The weights for your attributes are stored. The second line will be the actual attributes that you're going to score folks on. And then down below will be the actual scores. This will all make sense for you in a couple more minutes, but we'll go ahead and get started. So I'm going to bold these lines just so they stand out. So I went ahead and created the data for you for all these. You can thank me for that later. It's absolutely the hardest part about grading supplier performance is actually doing the data collection. Some of these are kind of hard and fast numbers that you could pull out of a system like an ERP or something, but some of them require you to survey your team to find out, for example, how often are we having quality issues with these guys, or how would you rate them in terms of their willingness to communicate with us, those kinds of things. So I've done all that hard work for you. So we'll go ahead and walk through these. So, fill rate, lead time, quality, payment terms, connectivity. That's an MBA buzzword right there if you've ever needed one. Improvement, cost, and I think we got one more over here. Yeah, MOQs, which is basically the minimum order quantities. So if we think back to our process here, basically, so we're determining the important factors. Check, we've just done that. The next one is to collect the scores for each factor by supplier. So that's what we're going to spend some time on now. And then the last one will be determining the importance of each factor, and we'll do that in a minute. So let's walk over to fill rate now, and I'll kind of explain how this works. If you guys have had me in class before, you already know this calculation. I wish I could ask you to make sure that you remember it, but nobody's here, so I'm just going to have to do it myself. So the fill rate calculation is the number of complete PO lines divided by the total PO lines. In other words, for Annixter Brothers, we ordered 1,684 separate purchase order lines from them. They delivered complete on 1,566 of them. So your fill rate is basically, we asked for 100 different orders from you, you ship 95 of them to us, your fill rate is 95%. So I'm going to copy that formula on down so that fill rate can be kind of established. Now fill rate itself is nice, but we need a way to kind of score this criteria. Basically what we're going to do is break things down into buckets. I'll kind of walk you guys through how that works. So basically we're going to create some ranges. So let's say 0 to let's say 60% is going to be a 1. 60 to 70% will be a 2. 70 to 80%, I'm sorry, not a 2, a 3. 70 to 80% will be a 5. 80% to 90% will be a 7. And then you can't go above 100, but I'm just going to put a number above that so that we can pull in these 100% items like Intellect Controls Group, which rocked it out at 100%. I just want to make sure it gets scored positively. So let me walk through what this represents, what I just created here for you. So what we're trying to get at is a 1, 3, 5, 7, or 9 for each of our scores for each of our suppliers. So on that front tab, the XY matrix, this entire table is going to be populated with 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 when we get done for each of these rows and columns. So in order to standardize that, we have to come up with ranges that are acceptable for us. So in this case, we're going to basically score according to this table here. The reason we use 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 is it just gives a way of kind of cutting out some of the opportunities for people to tie on different factors, and it also allows you to rank things according to value. So if something is very, very good, you would give it a 9. If something is pretty good, you would give it a 7. If something's average, you give it a 5. You guys know how grading works, but I'm just trying to kind of help give some background on it. So finally, let's go ahead and score these bad boys. So we're going to use a VLOOKUP. So we're going to reference this supplier's fill rate in this table. We're going to look up the second value, and then we are going to use the approximate match. So basically look at this range, and as soon as the range gets above my value, give me the result. So we're going to say true instead of false. So you can see we got a 9 because the value is between 0.9 and 1.1. So again, I'll copy this formula down. Hopefully we have no errors. That's right. Okay, so 99%, 98%, those both got 9s, right? There's a few 100%ers in here, which is pretty shocking, but we've also got some 15%ers. Come on, BASF. What's going on, right? So now we have a score. So we are going to do a VLOOKUP into our XY matrix and grab the score for all these suppliers. So we're going to VLOOKUP the supplier name over under the fill rate tab. We're going to return the fifth column. In this case, we want an exact match, and so we will choose false. And looky there, we've got us a score. Now this list is in alphabetical order already. It matches the supplier list, so obviously we could have just copied these values in, but for the rest of these, they might not be sorted the same way. So you need to be careful and make sure you're pulling in those fill rates correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and do a paste special values on this. Sometimes when we sort these tables later on, things can get a little bit wonky, so just want to make sure we're covered there. So that takes care of fill rate. So we're going to do the same thing on lead time now, and kind of keep progressing through here. So let's look through this list and see. So we've got a minimum of 1 week lead time. We've got a maximum of 10 weeks lead time. So lead time is basically how long suppliers need to fulfill your orders, right? So in this case, the best result is going to be the shortest lead time, right? And we're always going to kind of work up this list. So actually we're going to work down this list because the values are going to be decreasing. So let's go with, so a 1 week lead time is a 9, and because there's only 10 values here, I'll probably just go ahead and do 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So let's say we're okay with a 1 week lead time. 2 or 3 still pretty good. Maybe 4, 5, and 6 are average. You get into the 7s and 8s, that's bad, and the 9s and 10s are, I mean, that's just terrible, right? That's awful. So let's create a score here. So we're going to VLOOKUP our lead time value. We're going to pull back the second column, and we're doing an exact match because I literally laid out all 10 options here, right? So we'll check this before we copy it down. A 2-week lead time produces a score of a 7, which is exactly what we want, right? So we'll go ahead and copy that down. So you can see those are our scores here. And I'm going to go ahead and do the VLOOKUP on this item as well. Pull in the supplier name. Come over to the supplier, grab the third column, score of 7. I'm going to paste that down the whole row. So this gives me my scores for lead time. I'm going to copy that, paste special values. So that gets us through lead time. So our next item here, we've got some quality issues. I made you do a little bit more work on this one. I'm sorry, but just want to make you work for it a little bit. This is a list of all the quality issues we had. And you'll notice as we go down here, like B.W. Rogers Company had an issue on February 19th, another one on March 8th. This is for all of last year. So we want to see how many total quality issues each of these suppliers had. Again, if we're in class, I'm asking you guys, hey, how do we do this? But you're not here with me, so I'll just tell you we're going to use a pivot table. So I'm going to click inside that table, click Insert, and choose Pivot Table. You can put it in a new worksheet. I feel like I've already given you guys a bunch of worksheets here today, so I'm just going to put it in the existing worksheet and click OK. So we want a count of issues by supplier, right? Look here, we've got a bunch of issues, right? 2 for Annixter. Ashland Oil had 8. Come on, Ashland, what's going on? And then I'm just going to check real quick. So we have 57 that had issues. So that means there are actually some that did not have issues. There are some suppliers that had no issues. So our next step, we're going to grab the whole supplier list. You can grab it from any of the other tabs. I'm going to paste it over here to the side. So we need to know how many quality issues these suppliers had. Okay, so VLOOKUP, 2, false. So we're pulling the second number. We'll paste these values. So this is what I wanted to see, were these NAs here. So Robert Bosch did a good job. They had no issues last year. So I'm going to drop a 0 in for that one. Same for SKF, Kennametal, and Johnson Controls. So there's our supplier and count of issues. Okay. So you guys had to do a little extra work there. I'm sorry, but it builds character, right? So I'm going to come out here to the side. We're going to do the exact same thing we've been doing. So let's say 0 quality issues. Let's look at our list here. We've got 8 as our maximum. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 0 issues. Obviously, that's a 9, right? I think quality is a huge deal, right? So I think we should say maybe 7, really for that, just that middle one, and then 5 for the next one, next 2 maybe, and then 3 for the next 2, and then I'm gonna get hard on these folks and just say you have to be under 6 to avoid the lowest score, right? So we're gonna get very specific on how suppliers are being graded on quality. So there's our score criteria. So we'll go ahead and grab a score here. So look up the count of issues in our scoring table. Return the second column at false. So sorry, before we copy this down, let's just check our math here. So 2 issues gave us a score of 5. That's correct. We like that. Okay, so we've got our scores. Next step here is to pull that into our matrix. There's quality. This is getting boring. I know you guys are ready to keep moving. Okay, so we're going to pull in the supplier over to the score. So we want the third column. We're doing an exact match, so we say false. And we're going to copy that down. We've got a few 9s, but our average is like 4, 7, 6. And I'm going to paste special values and save your file.